churches, right?
Huh?
Not bad. Synchronized.
Okay, it looks like we're here. We should go ahead and get started at 6:30.
I will call the meeting to order, and would the clerk call the roll, please?
Furtado. Goss. Here. Harper. Here. King.
Here.
Lakshan.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Michaels. Pasalacqua.
Here.
Paul. Rodriguez. Storr.
Here.
Straub.
Here.
Summers.
Here.
Taylor. Thorsland.
Here.
Benish Theranon.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Wolkin. Carter.
Here.
Cowart.
Present.
Esri.
Here.
Patterson.
Here.
The meeting is called to order. Next is the prayer for the evening. Lord, help us not to despise what we do not understand. We ask you to open our eyes that we may value all people, recognizing what we have in common rather than focusing on what our differences might be. Inspire us to distinguish between what is important and what is not, and to open our hearts that we may inspire others as people of goodwill who bring joy. Amen. Rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk read the notice of the meeting, please?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on July 21st, 2022, 6:30 p.m. in the Shields Carter Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting. Which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you, Matt. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Esri.
So moved.
Thank you.
Vanish Thernot, second.
Ms. Vanish Thernot. Discussion on the agenda. Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next is the date and time of our next regular meetings. All the committees are meeting the next month. Committee of the Whole and County Board meeting is on August the 18th. Next, we have public participation. We have Mr. Mitchell. Are you going to speak this evening? Okay, come on up. You have 5 minutes to talk, and you know how to push the button down when you're ready.
Good evening, everybody. Appreciate you all for allowing me to sit here and just talk a little bit. So I just want to talk a little bit about the H3. But first and foremost, I would like to thank the consideration for the proposal that we put forth. I'm just one of many people who has worked on that particular proposal over the last, I think it's been about 16, 17 months. But for you, those of you who don't know me, my name is Marlon Mitchell. I'm actually the founder and executive director of First Followers, which is a reentry program here in Champaign. We've been in existence since 2015. As a not-for-profit, we consider ourselves a community-based organization because we truly believe in our community and just, keeping boots on the ground and trying to understand just the climate of where we are as a community. So just to speak a little bit about H3 and how it all kind of materialized, and not only the history of it, but the importance of the why. And why it got started is because we all know nationally there has been this uptick in gun violence that has been brewing for the last 3 to 4 years. And in 2021, the cities of Urbana and the city of Champaign has seen a dramatic rise in community violence. Myself, I've been impacted by community violence. My younger brother was killed in 2018, shot and killed here in Champaign, youngest of 7, military veteran. So I see this as a passion project, but also as something coming from a position of leadership in the community. I felt as though it was my duty, sworn duty, to take on the arms of trying to address a situation that many of us, whether we want to admit it or not, are at some point going to be affected by it. So as far as the H3 committee or the team and the leadership, I know you all, hopefully you all have had an opportunity to read through the proposal, at least the short version of it. We did submit a document that was maybe approximately 60 pages long. And I throw those numbers out because we've spent countless of hours trying to figure out how do we build a strategic plan over the next 2 to 3 years on trying to address a situation that needs to be addressed immediately. And resources need to go to the places that they need to go to in order to address the situations that are immediate. So I sat, the first meeting that we had was in April of 2021. But before that, one of the things that we did was we pinged the county board chair, City of Havana mayor, City of Champaign mayor, the village of Rantu, some of the trustees over there. We sent a letter because we understood that coming out of COVID, there were ARPA funds that were going to be allocated to each and every municipality. And so once Biden signed that into act, we got the numbers and we got the figures, and so we just sent out a letter to leadership, just ask them to put and set aside 10% of the funds that were coming to each and every municipality. And so the county, who's getting $41 million, so one of the ask was for $4.1 million because in the ARPA fund, or the draft of Biden's plan, was that some of the funds be earmarked for community violence. So we were just doing our due diligence as leadership just to step forward, because we do know that in the space that we work in, oftentimes I work with young African-American males and individuals that come from prison and that have done some prison time. And so we wanted to make sure that these folks had the resources that they need so that they could keep them out of these particular situations. And so once we pinged leadership, we started to pull together other organizations, and hence that's why you have H3, which stands for Harm, Healing, and Hope. So during those strategic plans, we came up with the name Harm, Healing, and Hope because we need to understand that all of us are being harmed, some shape, form, and fashion. Healing, we all need to be healed. The senseless violence, for example, that happened down in Texas here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, you still hear the news reports, but as we hear these news reports, who's doing what and how are they approaching that and what methods are they doing to address some of that situation? So long story short, we felt as though there's a need for us to step forward and to come together as a coalition. So this is not, and I want to be clear, this is not a first followers initiative. This is a community initiative. And as you can see through the proposal, you'll start to see the number of groups who we have met with and who we have standing MOUs with to help us do the work. Because First Followers stands in a unique lane. I don't deal with mental health, and we all know that's a need. I don't deal with and some other aspects, and as you read through the proposal, you'll see 5 different pillars. And we believe that if these 5 different pillars are addressed appropriately, that we can start to make some gains and start to redress some of the situations that we're seeing in our communities. And so with those 5 pillars, we have organizations, whether they're not-for-profits or for-profit, small LLCs, but we have folks that are already doing the work in the community, but they have been strapped by the lack of resources. So understanding that the ARPA funds here with the county, with $4.1 million being allocated over the next 2.5 years, this is an opportunity for you all to vote on some initiatives that are going to be meaningful, impactful, and very useful.
Marlon, your time's up.
Okay, and just to wrap it up, my hope is just to know that in the next 3 to 4 years, hopefully we won't be seeing this uptick in violence and that trend we're going in a different direction. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Beaupre.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you in person for the first time in a while. My name is Benjamin Beaupre. Wanted to talk about some issues related to the Community Violence Task Force, but real quick, I wanted to make an appeal for the local branch of the Champaign County NAACP. We're doing a lot of work on the ground to coordinate with local governments, local police departments, sheriff, there's a lot to be done. You know, there's so many programs they've been working on with the pandemic, and you know, just ongoing work with students and lost my thoughts there for a second, but there's just so much. And sometimes all it takes is to be someone like me who can endure some really, really boring government and committee meetings around town. And if you're watching or sitting here or listening to this, you're probably capable of taking some notes and doing that good work. It takes time, and we're pretty much at every meeting you can think of, but we all have stuff to do outside of activism. So if you can help, it doesn't matter what you look like, obviously. Appreciate anybody who can do that work. Been watching the Community Violence Task Force meetings remotely, and you know, there's a lot of good programs being discussed there and a lot of good funding, but I want to circle back, like I always do, to the Racial Justice Task Force recommendations, especially the two key recommendations in the summary of having a coordinating committee on the county level looking at all these programs, and a citizens oversight committee to see how it's being implemented, to have accountability. Even someone like me who is constantly trying to keep track of everything that's going on, you know, with, you know, as much spare time as I might have, someone who has a full-time job, there's no way they'd be able to keep up with all the craziness of every program, everybody trying to reinvent wheels, or just desperately hitting that wall with, you know, an overwhelming problem with lack of mental health resources, or, you know, a reentry system that sets people up to fail. There's so many great people doing incredible work, saving lives on a daily basis, including Marlon Mitchell, which I can't speak praises of him high enough. Is watching what he does with First Followers and now the H3, it's great work. But, you know, with the Regional Planning Commission that the county, you know, funds and works through on a lot of these social programs, it seems like there's a disconnect between places like the Champaign County Community Coalition, which, you know, just last year was trying to set up a kind of a coordinating commission itself, and I'm not sure if it ever took off or went off the ground at all. It seemed to kind of disappear in the virtual ether. So, I've talked to and worked with folks, you know, on the Champaign County Reentry Council, including Jim McGuire, and you know, the Justice and Social Services Committee here in the county board. But, you know, with the turnover of county board members, you know, it seems like I can never get caught up before there's a new person, you know, trying to figure out how we can do better as a community. And there's just so much intergovernment agreements and things like that, the bureaucracy, that just a regular person trying to figure out, you know, federal funding, state funding, local funding, grant funding, it's a nightmare. And there's just not one good source for folks to get to know what's happening, for even the other organizations that are working on some of the same problems or the interlocking problems. A lot of the problems we have here, you know, feed into each other. You know, issues of white supremacy in the past, you know, causing disparities that, while there may not be direct discrimination in some of the interlinks anymore, those disparities feed into other systems, and it's never the place's problem that accepts those racial disparities in responsible for changing them. So you have to find a way to work together, and appreciate your time.
Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public participation. Moving on to board communications. Does any member of the board have something to communicate this evening? Mr. Thorsland.
Yeah, thank you, Darlene. Last month, we had, or I guess it was this month, We had the joint meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Environment Land Use Committee. This was in regards to the modernizing of the wind farm ordinance. They came back with many suggestions. A lot of them were very good. Some of them were much more restrictive than what we currently have. And we had the joint meeting the first time in something like 40 or 50 years, according to John Hall, to try to work through some of those differences. And we had another one scheduled originally for September 25th, then moved to August 11th. I want to let people know that the Zoning Board of Appeals decided to not participate in another joint meeting, which is unfortunate. I know the ELOC members appreciated them doing that meeting with us. We appreciated their input. We, of course, always appreciate their work in handling the public hearings over a long period of time. I don't think that we will try to schedule another one because they've made it pretty clear they don't want to do it. But I wanted to thank them anyway for doing it and to let people know who were maybe planning on attending that rescheduled twice meeting for August 11th that it will not be happening. That will be a regular zoning board meeting that night. So that's all.
Mr. Goss.
Thank you. Just a quick piece of, another piece of constituent communication today. We're constantly having trouble with county offices returning phone calls. I have a constituent that has a real estate tax issue. They've called and left messages 5 different times with no return of phone calls, and I think we ought to expect more out of our elected officials than that. They need to return phone calls that has to do with a real estate tax bill, and the person has gotten in touch with them twice, but left 5 different emails or 5 different voicemails after they've talked to people in person and no return phone calls. So we should expect more of our elected officials.
Ms. Carter.
Over this last week, I've received several emails from county employees, and I'm just really disappointed by the stories that I've heard. The employees are struggling to take care of their families. They're working 2 jobs. You know, this is really serious, and I think that we should all take this very seriously. No one working a full-time job should have to also work a part-time job to try to keep up with today's inflation. So I just definitely want you all to know that we should definitely be considering their fair contracts and fair wages. Thank you.
Ms. Cowart.
I got a call from one of my constituents in Liberty Commons, a Reverend Steve Stanley, and his complaint was that he's trying to get more police presence in their neighborhood because he said when things happen, they call up the sheriff, 911, and they're being told that they can do nothing because they're on private property. So I say, well, nothing, I know that they don't do too much on private property, not even here in the city, but I will relate the message, and so I'm just sorry that the sheriff is not here so he could address this, but I told him that I would bring it up here at the meeting, so that's all.
It'd be good if the sheriff knew if that was county property or city property, because it's different police jurisdictions.
You said what?
Is it county property or city property inside the city limits? Then it's different jurisdictions.
He's out in the county.
Okay, then yeah, let the sheriff know. Anything else? Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of June 23rd, 2022?
So moved.
Mr. Summer?
Second.
Ms. King? Any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. New business items, A and B. Items A and B are the auditor's office items, and the auditor is not here this evening, but I will take questions back if you have some. If there's no objection, I will take an omnibus motion for items A and B for adoption of resolution number 2022-143, authorizing payment of claims, and adoption of resolution number 2022-144, authorizing purchases not following purchasing policy. Mr. Passalacqua, second. Ms. Cowart? Sorry. Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, I believe that still carries. Thank you. Can the executive get a motion for item C for adoption of resolution number 2022-145, approving the budget amendment, BUA 2022-7-204, Fund 2085 County Motor Fuel Tax, Department 060 Highway, for increasing the appropriation, $855,000, increased revenue, $855,000. Reason, receipt of Truck Access Route Program, TARP, funds from the state of Illinois for the county road 20 cycle and overlay project. Ms. Cowart?
I'll second.
Ms. Lakshan? Any discussion? Okay, we need a roll call and 15 votes, please.
Goss,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lakshan,
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Passalacqua,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Straub,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Finish there not,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Cowart,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
That motion carries. Can I get a motion for item D, adoption of resolution number 2022-146, approving budget amendment BUA 2022-7-44, Fund 2075 Regional Planning Commission, Department 100 Regional Planning Commission, for increased appropriation of $30,000, for increased revenue of $30,000. The reason is to appropriation to expend funds received from the Illinois Department of Human Services for emergency transitional housing.
So moved.
Mr. Patterson?
Second.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. Raise your hand, please.
Second.
Mr. Goss, thank you. Discussion? Mr. Patterson?
Delitzo, is this just for the normal programming that's currently going on, or is this additional?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is this funding, is it funding ongoing services, or is this additional services?
These are additional funds that we've received from the Department of Human Services.
Okay, so what is the, what will be the additional services?
So
I think what he's
I
asking,
believe it's
so is
outlined in
this
the
a
memo.
current program that you're already offering with just additional funds attached to it now?
correct, and we'll
Yeah.
provide some additional case management, and it will cover staff expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I need a roll call, please, and 15 votes.
Goss,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lakshan,
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Passalacqua,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Straub,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Finish there not,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Cowart,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to item E, can the executive get a motion for adoption of resolution number 2022-147, approving budget transfer BUA 2022-7-95, Fund 1080, General Corporate, Department 151 Juvenile Detention Center. The amount is for $200,000. This is money that's in their budget but needs to be transferred for board detained minors in out-of-county facilities to address the chronic and persistent staffing shortages. So he's asking to move money from the personnel item to this operational item. Can I get a motion? Ms. Cowart. Second, Mr. Williams. Any further discussion? Mr. McGuire.
Actually, I'd like to have him come up and explain what the situation is, how long he expects it to continue, how much budget he has to continue to pay for the housing out of county, and how the families feel about having their kids out of county.
Mr. Willis is here this evening. He's the superintendent of the JDC.
What was the question?
So it's $200,000 to get to October, as I understand.
Yes.
What is your plan to get more staff and your expected, go ahead.
We have done several things. The latest, we have got approval from the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, which governs us in hiring. Part of the education requirement was a bachelor's degree. We were not getting the applicants. We obtained a 6-month waiver from the administrative office to hire individuals with less than a bachelor's degree. They would have to have 60 semester hours of college, and or if they had less than 60 hours of college, they had to have at least 2 years experience in law enforcement, corrections, or residential treatment center. We're doing that to attract more applicants. We have hired 3 that's currently in their 3rd week of training. I have 2 starting tomorrow. I had 1 individual take a psychological exam today. I have 2 more interviews on Monday. We are currently, because of our low staffing numbers, because I have 1 individual, 1 officer today is his last day, and I have a supervisor resigning. And plus, with all the other openings I have 1 individual who's on light duty and another person who's on extended leave of absence because of medical issue. So we are transferring individuals out of county to 3 different detention centers within the state: McLean County, Will County in Joliet, and Lake County in Vernon Hills, Illinois. Unfortunately, out of the 15 detention centers in the state of Illinois, 10 of them are having personnel issues. So it's really scarce to find open beds, so to speak. So I have 12 in the 3 different counties, but I have 9 sitting over there as of 6:30 today because of intakes within the last couple of days. So as far as, I believe the next question was the parents, I have personally contacted every parent and or guardian of every individual that is detained in the detention center. They know where their son or daughter is, and they are getting contact, whether it be telephone contact or visitation via Zoom if they cannot make it to that detention center.
So is there exit interviews with the staff that's leaving to find out why they're leaving? And
Yes.
And what are we finding? Is it money? Is it, what's going on with
I would say
corrections general?
60% have left for better paying jobs.
So you currently have people there and they're working and they're staffing the new arrivals, the young people that are coming in. How many positions do you actually have to fill to get back to strength to open the?
How many do I have to fill today?
No, how many do you have to fill within the next 2 months? How how many more staff do you have to find, and will you be able to do that?
12.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Carter?
So there's 12 open positions right now, is what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Not minus in the 7 that you got coming in? You're not minus in the 7. You said you hired 3, you got 2 that's gonna start tomorrow and 2 that's gonna take a
Well,
psych test?
I misspoke. I'm gonna have to hire 11.
Say that again.
I'm gonna have to hire 11. I didn't count. I counted one position that I should not have counted.
So you have to hire 11 additional?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Stan.
Okay. What happens if we don't get enough people by October?
We would have to sit down with the chief judge and the county executive and the county board chair and some other stakeholders to discuss if we can support the operation of the juvenile detention center in Champaign County.
Okay. I look at the numbers and I'm sitting here going, between this and jail, that's roughly $2.2 million left this county for someplace else.
I'd just like to express my support for the people who've been working at the Juvenile Detention Center. From what I understand, there are people who weren't allowed time off even to see their child graduate from high school. And I really hope that we're able to attract people to relieve your staffing issues.
Any further questions for Keith? Mr. Penn?
Kind of echo Ms. King's statements. I just want to acknowledge that I imagine that for some time now you've had a very difficult job, and just want to thank you for the progress that you've been able to make, recent hires, and hopefully we can, get the situation figured out.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Okay, thanks for coming tonight, Keith. Any further discussion on this amendment or transfer? Seeing none, would the clerk call the roll, please? This requires 15 votes.
Goss,
Yeah.
Harper,
Yes.
King, Lockton.
Yes.
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Passalacqua,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Straub,
Yes.
Summers,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Finish there not,
Yes.
Williams, Carter,
Yes.
Cowart,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Okay, that is the 15th. All right, that passes. If there's no objection, I can do the next two as an omnibus motion. Can the executive get a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-148, authorizing the county executive to assign mobile home sales tax certificate of purchase, permanent parcel 29-050-0129, and adoption of resolution number 2022-149, authorizing the cancellation of the appropriate certificate of purchase on a mobile home parcel 04-002-0054.
So
Mr.
moved.
Goss, thank you. Mr. Storr, any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have item H. Can the executive get a motion for adoption of resolution number 2022-150, approving the appointment of election judges for the 2022-2024 term?
So moved.
Mr. Summers, second. Ms. King? Discussion? Mr. McGuire?
Is there somebody from the clerk's office to ask a question?
I don't believe there's anybody from the clerk's office here tonight.
So we're presenting something without providing anybody to ask for something as important as elections? I would like to know how they contact judges when they have a shortage of judges, if there's no phone numbers on the list or emails.
How to contact the judges themselves?
Yeah, you have to schedule them and to ask them to serve. They have names, but they don't have phone numbers. Thank you.
Mr. Patterson?
Are you referring to the list that's in our packet? I'm going to jump out on a limb and say
To
that.
answer your question, I've seen both lists. I've seen the list the clerk provided to the party, and I've seen this list, and the Republican list has no information. The Democrat list has some missing phone numbers and emails. Elections are important. We have good judges in both parties. They should be able to be contacted to serve. Thank you.
I can pass that question along to the clerk. Anything else? Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're down to the discussion information items. First is just information about all of our open appointments as usual. Second item is the American Rescue Plan Act discussion. I'm sorry Kathy Larson is not able to be with us this evening. She was going to give her regular update, but I can answer questions if I know them, or I can carry back questions for her if we have some. She will have a more detailed report at the next meeting. We are beginning to close some grants that we've given out and have some outcomes to report. We also have programs in progress that are now beginning to turn in their first quarter reports. So you'll get a little bit more on the progress of how some of these projects are doing. And she also is going to do a little bit more analysis of what funds we might have left to allocate. For those of you that have not heard, we did get our second tranche of the ARPA money in June. So I know the intention of the board probably was to allocate most of that in the next budget year, but there's no reason we couldn't do additional grants now. We have the money in hand, so it's a process we need to go through. So tonight we have several to talk about, if there's no questions about just things in general that I should take back to her. Okay. So the first one is an intergovernmental agreement for the housing assistance. We need to move that to the August meeting. It was unfortunate I didn't notice it was in the wrong place on the agenda. This is an intergovernmental agreement, so it does require an actual vote by the board. So I'll have to move it into business items next month. The Regional Planning Commission, Delitzo and Betty are here tonight to have a supplemental request. We have agreed that we would fund their early childhood center. They were ready to do that and then had some issues. So Delitzo, do you want to come up and talk about that?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity, and want to begin by, again, extending our appreciation to the county board for allocating in the FY 2022 budget $1.5 million for the Regional Planning Commission to purchase a facility that would house our early childhood education programming, particularly for our early Head Start children, which would be 0 to 3-year-olds. As you all know, with rising costs, we need some additional funds for the building that we have identified for purchase, and the ask is for an additional $500,000. The Regional Planning Commission would actually also provide some of its own resources that we've received from a subsidy program within the early childhood program, as well as some grant funds that we have to provide a 20% contribution to the total purchase of this building in Champaign. We're here to answer any questions that you might have, but as we've indicated in the memo, this investment by the county would certainly have a residual impact in our community for impacting over 8,000 families over a period of 40 years. And so this is pretty much in line with the final rules that the ARPA final rules in terms of your investments towards early learning capacity building in our community.
Are there any questions? Mr. Goss?
Yeah, does this get us to occupancy? I mean, is this going to be everything we're ready to go come fall? Or
Yes.
I don't know what your expectation is, but I assume fall.
Yes, this should get us ready to full occupancy. We would have the building fully renovated, and we've actually had our facilities director with the county that has walked through the building, and so this would certainly get us to that point.
My only question. Thank you.
Ms. Carter?
Thank you. When is the leaving date for the Country Fair location? Or the ending of the lease? Because I think we said that building is going to be sold, right? So that's not going to be of use anymore?
So the facility I think you're referring to is the one we co-located with the school district?
Yes.
On Neal Street.
Yes.
We will be vacating that, I believe, in February of 2023.
Oh, that's
so,
right. It's Neal
so
Street.
the
I got it
completion
wrong.
of this would coincide with that time frame.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Ms. Lakshan?
I would certainly place this under the category you spoke of things that we have the money in hand and we have the ability to vote on things early. I know I certainly would intend to put money towards early childhood education and developing opportunities for that in the budget, so I'd be all for supporting this.
Not seeing any other hands? Any other questions? Okay, so this doesn't really require a vote because it's already in the budget. We can go ahead and do that. Is there consensus or any big objection to not doing this? Everybody's in agreement that we should move forward with adding this amount to this grant? Okay, thanks for coming to Litso.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is the recommendations from the Community Violence Prevention Task Force, which is the last the area that you guys had allocated funds for, but we hadn't had specific projects decided. The board earlier decided to give $100,000 of that particular pot of money to the Crime Stoppers, and that has already been done. That contract's already been signed. And so, Mr. Patterson, would you please report on your board's committee? Community Justice Task Force Committee recommendations? Yeah.
All right. So you guys can see in your packet, we do have information from the different organizations that are recommended. Tonight we heard from Marlon, who's representing the H3 Coalition. Also recommended some funding for the Vision to Succeed, which is a brand new program focused on teen mentoring. Dream House, which I believe Tracy is here tonight from Dream. I mean, they've been around for a while. I think we've heard from Tracy before. He's got a good program that targets youth. And then the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority came to us back in April, and we didn't fund all their proposals. And the ones we didn't fund, they presented to the task force, and we decided to fund, I believe, 2 of the 3 proposals that they put before us. But, you know, let's say, like, a lot of these are focused on programs that are targeting young people. I think that, you know, when we talk about community violence, it's very clear that this is you know, a problem of, you know, youthful people. So I think that it's very valuable that, you know, they're investing in trying to improve the lives of young people in our community.
Any other comments or discussion? Ms. King?
So how much money are we allocating to each of these organizations?
There is a breakdown, I believe, on, I'm sorry, page
126.
Yes, 126. It's like sort of set up like the agenda from the meeting or like the action report. So it'll be $500,000 for the H3 Coalition, which is year 1 funding. The Housing Authority would get $300,000 and $85,000. for the two different, because we're funding the supportive services, which is like case management for people who are either receiving vouchers to help them, pick themselves up, or to help individuals who have vouchers and need to locate an apartment or a rental. And then 85 for landlord incentives to try to create more diversity or more geographic diversity in the community for voucher holders, because there's a pretty dense concentration in certain neighborhoods, and it would give bonuses to landlords who live in for rentals within census tracts that are have better economy or better economically, and then 15,000 for the Vision to Succeed.
Other questions? Mr. Goss?
Yeah, I have questions for the H3 proposal. If Mr. Mitchell would answer for me, if you could. Understood. In here it says you're going to hire a full-time director, a full-time administrator. Have those hires been made?
No.
When do you anticipate those hires being made?
So the way we approached it, since we've been working on this proposal for quite some time, turning over into 2022, we were under the impression that a full year, right? So as time went on, and there's been a lot of presentations with the committee, the subcommittee, and so we kind of, if you look in the budget, it's at 42%, so that's not a full year. So if funded, we'll have to prorate that or backrate that and just start that process. So it's my understanding the way the contract is going to work. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to be cyclical, a yearly cycle, or if it's going to be a fiscal cycle, or it's going to be a from start to the next year. So all of that comes into play. But immediately after, if the proposal is, once the contract if it's agreed upon and signed, then we'll start looking.
Did you get funding from any of the other governmental, like City of Champaign, City of Urbana, City of Rantoul?
So when you say if we...
ARPA, H3.
H3 has not been funded by any of the local municipalities.
Okay. Who have you selected your strategic planning consultant?
Yeah, in a sense we have. That's a person that has been working with us since about a year ago. They came on board. We brought them on board fall of last year.
Can you share with us who that is?
It's an agency out of North Carolina, Trill Center, TRELLCENTER. I think that's in the. It should be in the budget.
Okay. And then the last couple of questions I had is, do we have any kind of, because you've got strategic planning consultants, I'm sure they've talked about key performance initiatives, metrics on what does success look like? Are you at that level yet where you can say what does success look like in this program?
Yeah, so what we've done with that is some of the folks that's in the MOU, we brought them to the table, and with the work that they're doing, we were asking just that. What does those metrics look like? How do I know what you're doing is being impactful and if it's effective? And so we've put together a database already with our strategic planner to identify all those metrics. And with that database, it's to an extent it's been tailored to each program, each organization, because one of the things that we want to make sure is that everyone has the autonomy to do what they've been doing. Everybody has the autonomy to stay in the lane and do the work that they're doing, that they've been promised to do, and some of them that are already doing the work. And so with that, through their experiences, their professional experiences of doing that work, we've been able to design and develop the metrics, and then also the platform that we're going to use so that they can report that work on a monthly basis. And from there, the H3 staff would be able to create those reports so that if we do have to report out, or when we have to report out to the county board or whatever government body that we report to, that would already be in place. So that's part of the strategic plan that we've already started that conversation. We already have a plan in place for that.
Yeah, I guess I think the county board should see those metrics so we kind of know what's being measured for this kind of funding to a new organization. because I'm sure you're going to want to be back here again in 2023 and possibly 2024 for funding as well. And I would like to see what those metrics are to measure success.
Okay.
Obviously, for this kind of funding, you can funnel it through the county executive through email if that's fine. She can get it out to all of us, but I would like to see those those metrics so that we know how to measure success of this program, because obviously there are several organizations here that are currently in existence that are being funded through other funding mechanisms. And so this coalition, I guess I maybe call it, is getting funding from other places. I would like to see this combination, what they think are success metrics. So that would just be my request before I voted yes for this proposal.
Okay.
So thank you. I appreciate your
All right,
your
just
time.
to piggyback on that, one of the things that we have been, and we understand how all that works, so that's why we've been trying to be proactive, but not only for the county board, but for sustainability purposes. So we fully understand that the 2024, the ARPA funds are going to go away. But we do also understand that as long as we're documenting our successes and some of the challenges where we have to be responsive to change things, we want to capture all that in real time, right? So by 2024, when we know the ARPA funds, we're no longer relying on the county board funds, that we will be able to shop this around to either state, other governments, right? So that's kind of how we're approaching this strategic plan. And if you read through it, you'll see that entire 3-year window that we've taken a snapshot of.
Thank you. Thank you for staying and answering my questions.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Ms. Carter?
Yeah, just a suggestion. I would like to see if maybe both of the gyms would like to sit down with first followers. Maybe you got some suggestions that would help them be successful and follow this through, if that would be possible.
If I have the invitation, that's fine. But I'd like to see the H3 proposal. If they've got metrics designed, I'm not an expert at these individual things. I just like to see what their metrics are. I am in business, and we do have strategic plans. I know what those key things are that should be followed. I just like to see how we're going to measure it for success. We're talking about doling out a lot of money here. And if we don't have success, we have to report back to the community why that's not happening. And, we all want to end community violence.
And that's why I suggest that maybe to make this successful, that you could be very knowledgeable in those areas and maybe help with this proposal. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? I'm sorry, Ms. Furtado. Welcome to the meeting.
Sorry, I just came in. I was at work. But I did want to say, I think one of the things that really excites me about this, and one of the things that to some degree has been lacking in our community, is the sustainability piece. And I think one of the things I was really happy with the committee is with Dream House and with the H3 model, both of them are comprehensive. They have a lot of partners, and they're the kind of thing that I think could leverage national money into our community, money that other communities get that we leave on the table from like big foundations and stuff like that. And so one of the goals that I have as finance chair of ARPA is figuring out, and this is for everything, right? We're not going to be able to do the entire broadband with what we got. We're not going to be able to solve community violence with what we got. We're not going to be able to solve housing with what we got. Figuring out how we leverage those monies to the future, right? And to put forward programs that have a strong basis of partnerships with grassroots people locally, getting them all work together. So the goal is that these programs leverage this for beyond 2024, and that's exciting. But at the same time, the Vision to Succeed little program, Aaron and the committee brought up a good point. Let's maybe try to give at least one new agency a little bit of money, and hopefully they'll come into one of the other big groups and one of the big coalitions so that they could be part of that sustainability thing. And then just, quite frankly, the proposals from the Housing Authority were really compelling. And so, and we've had a long-term partnership with them. So just to kind of let you into the logic of why we wanted to do this is to figure out ways that we as a county can encourage groups to work together. And because not only does that mean we're not duplicating services, but it also means that we're putting those organizations in a better position for future long-term real funding. And I feel like that piece, as somebody who used to work in the grant writing world for a long time, I feel like that piece has been missing in our community. We've had a lot of groups siloed, and I think that this is an opportunity to get them to collaborate in ways that will bring actual material resources in the future in ways that we haven't seen before. At least that's the hope, right? Because we don't want there to be a cliff. And as we all know, this money has a shelf life, right? So cliff, shelf, I don't know. Anything else flat that things could fall off of. Insert your metaphor here. All right, bye.
Okay. Ms. Carter?
Well, I'm going to be very optimistic. I watched during COVID, these nonprofits were still moving. Even though the world had stopped, they kept on doing what work needed to be done in this community. And so with that being said, I'm just very thankful for the opportunity to be able to get these monies to these organizations that have been working with little to no money for so long and still making moves in our community. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity, and I'm very supportive for all the nonprofits and the Housing Authority organization. Thank you.
Mr. McGuire?
Thank you, Martell, for your presentation. And I really appreciate all the work that all of you have been doing for the last few years. Not that I have an issue with some of the other programs, will do a great job for us also. Obviously, we're going to spend almost, $1.5 million through this process from ARPA for this one program. During the process of receiving questions and requests for funding, we've had many programs that have many people involved. Our own reentry program has probably 12 to 15 different groups involved in the reentry program. We had many other programs that came and asked for funding to help pay their staff because they're having trouble retaining their staff. There are current programs with tax levies, grants, and they need the funding. We just had our JDC person come up here and tell us we don't have enough money to pay and retain that staff. So while I hope Martell, great success and the other people involved, we're limiting the ability of the organizations and programs that we have currently to be successful, and will likely waste, not completely, we'll spend the money on programs that will not continue after a couple of years, at the same time make it difficult to retain the needed trained staff for the programs, mental health, and everything else that we currently have in the county. Thank you.
Ms. King?
So what kind of decision are we taking on this tonight? This doesn't involve a vote, right? You're just going to do a quorum of how many people on the board are interested in continuing in this direction. Is that correct? Okay.
So let me just say, from an administration standpoint, this grant is different than most of the other ones that you've seen. When we did things like, for example, the water projects, they were a grant that was involved with a certain thing that had a completion date, and then we're done with it. When we did the grants for some of the things like the mental health center, or the mental health board, I'm sorry, they've subgranted to agencies that did client services. And most of our grants that we've tried to run through the small business, those have to do with number of participants or number of clients or number of people receiving the service. This one is different. The First Followers one is different because it really is not going to pretend even to deal with a lot of clients. The outcome measures that you're looking for are a number of people, for example, that might stay out of jail or that get a job, those kind of things. But really what this grant, if you look at the budget, is funding is the startup of a new organization. That's the outcome that you should expect to see at the end, is that we've completely helped a new organization start, and that it has formed a 501c3, and that it has been successful in obtaining additional funding to continue. That's really the outcome measure. It's not about the clients that they're serving. That's a side thing, because once they get formed, they'll be able to then hopefully serve clients. But if you look at the budget here, there's a third or fourth of the budget has to do with the 3 staff people they're going to hire, which are actually fairly high salaries, I might add, but that's really what most of the budget is going for: hiring the consultants, hiring the 2 or 3 staff people, and making sure that they get the work done. I'm just mentioning what you're paying for, so when you're looking for outcomes, that's what this grant is proposing. It's not proposing that we're going to serve 3,000 kids. Yeah, Stephanie.
So I do want to push back on that just a tad. I do think we are funding staff, and we are funding the formation of a new coalition that's going to put us in a position. I mean, that's the reason I support this program. But there are specific matrices that are indicated in the proposal for the different programs of people that they expect to serve for the lifetime of just this particular 6-month funding. And I would expect that the MOU is going to indicate those, right, matrices. So it's very much that we're building a house while we're living in the house, but that doesn't mean we're not living in the house, right? So I completely disagree. I would not have supported this if I didn't think that actually serving clients was something that is indicated in the proposal. It's indicated with great specificity, or that we as a board, we're going to be receiving information about hitting those matrices, as Jim said. That's clearly outlined in the proposal and should be part of the MOU. I also just want to say, in terms of that, mostly what we're funding is staff. That's typically the case with service agencies, right? If you look at the multiple RPC initiatives that we've seen coming forward, and if you actually look at their budgets, the vast majority of it is staffing the initiatives, especially staffing the new initiatives that RPC starts up through the various grants that they receive. So that's typical. The one thing that is not addressed in this proposal, it is addressed in their broader proposal for, multi-year, that we've been talking about sort of across the aisle for a very long time, is a one-stop shop building. And that's something, if we want to explore, we would need to explore in future iterations of this funding. And I think could be a long-term impact and might fall under that H3 model. But that's not part of this particular budget. This particular budget is the staffing to get the initiative up and to develop the robust kind of indicators that would not only allow us to determine whether we want to continue to invest in this program, but also set up the data points that would enable an initiative like H3 to go after that federal funding. If you want to go after that kind of federal funding, you have to have some sort of indicators of early programmatic success, and I think that this proposal does both. So to act as if that this proposal is simply startup costs and not actual program costs, I think is a little bit of a misnomer. And some of those programs have been started up even without funding already. While they've been waiting for our deliberations, the H3 coalition has started doing the work, all right? So I just want that to be clear, that the expectation is that they're actually going to be serving clients in a variety of different ways, and that they're going to be reporting back to us as a board about that. And I think that through these ARPA updates, we'll have multiple opportunities to see how that, and I want to say not just H3, but also I think we talk a lot about H3, but DREAM, if you looked at DREAM's proposal, it's also very robust, very ambitious, and has 3 pretty serious pillars to their proposal as well. So if you think about it across the board, we're going to have a lot to sort of digest to ensure that, I do think it's important to ensure that the funding that we're putting into these proposals is getting the results that we want. Understanding that this kind of work is difficult. How do we measure success, right? How do you know that somebody did not end up incarcerated that would have, right? Measuring success in these kind of initiatives is difficult, and that's one of the reasons bringing in a strategic planner with experience in that in order to model out results is so incredibly important, right?
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, so is the consensus of the board that we're going to move forward with the recommendations of the task force? I didn't hear about the other one. First Followers was the one, the H3 proposal. We didn't really talk a lot about the other ones that much. Okay. So we will begin to do contracts, and then this one I'll pass along further information before we finalize a contract. Okay. So the last thing just to talk about in terms of the ARPA funding is for you to know that at our next full board meeting, there will be a couple of new presentations of things that have been mentioned to the board, but nobody's actually presented at any of the task forces or study sessions. They might have been a little bit outliers, or they might be additional projects that people have brought forward. So expect that there will be a couple of presentations at the ARPA update next time. Ms. Furtado.
And my understanding is that this body is going to receive an update from the broadband task force at the next meeting.
Yes.
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 Because we do have, that's the last pot of money we have. We have almost $2.5 million.
There's about $2.5 million
right, that's left
right.
sitting there, and there's some grants that are coming due pretty soon. So we need to make some decisions on like how we want to move forward with the broadband, so that we can get our grant writer to. We want to leverage that money, right? And so that's going to be super important.
Yeah, so I think we mentioned that before you got here.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
That's okay. At the next meeting, there will be a broader, more detailed report on some of the outcomes that we've started to see, or grants that are actually finished. It was a one-time thing. And then also what money you have left. So we'll have that bigger discussion next time. Okay, anything else? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.